welcome back, guys. Another ranking list of mine. This time it's the Coen brothers. For those who don't know, I've been doing ranking lists for Darren Aronofsky, David Lynch, David Fincher, Steven Spielberg, Tim Burton. Check them down in the playlist down below. You'll be able to recognize them right away. But anyways, guys, the Coen brothers, Joel and Ethan Coen. So this is a little bit different because I'm just being blunt. So Joel Coen, I believe he's the one. He gets credit. He's directed all of their films. Ethan Coen sometimes gets credit, but they both said in interviews and are very adamant about the fact that they both do direct. Like every single film they do it together. Some of the, like one or the other gets more credit than the other, and sometimes the one doesn't even get complete credit. And it's a shame, but it's just how they do it. And they've done 18 films. Now, they have done another film that was 20 other directors did it as well, which is why I'm not counting it. I forget the name of it, but I was just like, when I was going through the filmography, I was like, I'm not counting this film because it's not a film that they directed. It's kind of like when I did Quentin Tarantino's list. I didn't count like From Dusk Till Dawn, or I forget what other films, or Sin City. You know, I don't count it because it's like if you direct one or two scenes, it doesn't mean you directed the whole film. Joel and Ethan Coen, though, they directed the entire films of these 18. So enough exposition. From 18 to 1, 18 being the worst, number 1 being the best. Let's go. So number 18, this is the kiddie film of theirs. It's the only PG film they've done. That's the Hudsucker Proxy with Tim Robbins as the lead character who essentially takes over this business, and he has a lucrative idea of like a circle. It ended up being pretty lucrative in the long run, but it's a simple film. It's funny in some scenes. It's whimsical. It's enjoyable. It's light Coen Brothers fare, but it's still enjoyable. It's not a film that you watch and you say it was a waste of time. You watch and you say, like, this is charming. This is a charming film that I just don't mind it. I don't mind it at all. Number 17, this is a film that it's interesting when you go on like Rotten Tomatoes or IMDb because you can see the divide between critics and audiences, and that's Hail Caesar. This was a rock solid film for me. It's a film that I appreciate and I enjoy. I like the throwback to, I believe it was the 60s, but it's a film that's more appreciation worthy than entertainment worthy, and then that's odd for a Coen Brothers film, I know, but it's a film that it's lightweight in both categories. It's just obviously more of an appreciation piece than an entertainment piece, but it's still a rock solid film. Like, it's not a film that I would say was bad. I liked it. I thought it was solid. Number 16, Intolerable Cruelty with Catherine Zeta-Jones and George Clooney. They have great chemistry together. This is a very old-fashioned film, I felt. It was very reminiscent of those films you would find in like the 50s and 60s, like a screwball comedy, just R-rated. But it's a very light R rating when you break it down. It's mostly because of language, which, yeah, obviously in 50s, 60s you couldn't get away with. But this is still a film that you take out the language. It's a typical 50s, 60s screwball comedy. And I didn't mind that. I didn't mind it because, again, I liked both actor and actress. And so that's why it was enjoyable for me. And, of course, the Coen Brothers' signature humor, it worked. It was entertaining. And, yeah, that's why it was number 16. Number 15 was one of the most recent Coen Brothers films I finally got around to watching. It's a remake. I didn't see the original, but it's The Lady Killers. And that's with Tom Hanks as an eccentric Southern charmer of a business person. That's, what the film's about, how he and a couple other people are trying to swindle this old lady into essentially letting them use her house as like a base for stealing money from a bank. It's definitely, out there. It's like a heist film, but it's also first and forefront a comedy. And I think it worked more than it didn't work. And I think it's definitely a film that's very quotable. I did find myself chuckling a lot while watching it. And I think, although it is lightweight, it's still very charming in its approach to the material. And I would recommend it. I would definitely say it's solid. And that's why it's, number 15. Number 14, it's one of those films where if someone watched it and you asked them who they thought would have directed it, they would be blown away but to find out that it was directed by the Coen brothers, and that's A Serious Man. A Serious Man feels, well, like the title says, serious. It's very serious in its approach to material, which is very odd for a Coen Brothers film, which I know they're odd filmmakers to begin with, but it's odd because most of their films have like a lot of humor. This film really didn't. It was very serious. It was short, but it did feel long. And it's not a great film, at least to me. I do want to rewatch it to see if maybe I like it better. But as of right now, I think it's a solid film. I think it got the job done overall in the end with its philosophical approach, but it's not a great film in my opinion. Number 13. This was actually the last Coen Brothers film I saw. The film that I saw, and it was like, okay, I've seen all 18 films. Let's get started filming the review. And that was The Man Who Wasn't There. This stars Billy Bob Thornton, Frances McDormand, which, little Easter egg, she's married to, I believe it's Joel Coen, one of the Coen brothers. So she's a great actress. She's great in the film. Billy Bob Thornton kills it. This is a throwback to noir films. I think it worked. I found it very enjoyable. It's very serious, which much in the same way as A Serious Man is very interesting for a Coen Brothers film, but it worked. I thought the mini twists in the film also worked. And I think overall, it's a rock solid film that hits its marks more often than it doesn't. Number 12, this was the most recent Coen Brothers film that premiered on Netflix, and that's The Ballad of Buster Scruggs. I liked it. I think it's a good film. I don't think it's perfect by any means, but I think the anthology-esque storytelling worked more often than it didn't. And the acting is good and everything, and it's also meme-worthy, specifically James Franco when he's about to get hung, like that scene. Very meme-worthy. I liked it. It's a good film. Didn't love it, but it's still good. Number 10, nope, my mistake. Number 11. That's Blood Simple. This was a good film. This is one of the few Coen Brothers films that are Criterion Collection, and I do think it's a good film. I do want to rewatch it because it was their first film, and I do think that it's worth appreciating for sure for that alone. But it also works. It shows their whole approach of there's a plan to murder someone, things get out of control, and then, comedic hijinks ensue as well as thrilling hijinks ensue. That's their whole filmmaking style. I'll get into that at the end. I do that always with my reviews of ranking lists. I talk about the filmmaking style at the very end of the review, so I'll get into that. But I think that their style worked real well for Blood Simple. It definitely showed audience members the approach that the Coen Brothers would later use for the remaining 17 of their films. So it's a good film. Good film. Would definitely recommend. Number 10. So number 10 made my top 10 of Coen Brothers films specifically for one scene and one scene alone. It's great. It's a scene involving a character. I'm not going to spoil the scene, but it's a character that looks into a closet and sees another character. And with what happens to the character in the closet during that scene, the way it's edited, the way it's shot, and what happens, to me, it's hilarious. I think it's worth putting as my number 10 for that scene alone. But overall, it's a good film. I think it definitely worked real well. I would recommend it. But after reading, it's a good film. Frances McDormand's in it. Brad Pitt's in it. Good film. Worth watching. Number 9 is a film that it goes to show that when Nicolas Cage is in the right role, he's great. And that's Raising Arizona. Raising Arizona was one of their first films, the Coen Brothers, that is, and it works. I think it's a good film that it's very funny. It's very subtle with its flourishes. It's a good film. Just check it out. Just trust me. It's a good film. Number 8's a very melancholy film. It's the ultimate hipster film. It's a country folklore film. It's a good film, though, and that's Inside Llewyn Davis. I know it sounds like a porno, but I assure you it's not. It's just a good film with Oscar Isaac at the forefront as the titular character. He is great in the film. I think it's very interesting to see the approach that the filmmakers decided to do with this film because it's the complete opposite of what they do in their films. They'll have like all of these quippy lines and everything, but this film felt less quippy and more, again, melancholy. It's focused on the nihilism of the main character. And I always like it when a filmmaker is worth, trying something new that might go against the grain of their style. And I felt like Inside Llewyn Davis did that. Now, it is flawed in some regards, but it's still a really good film. I would definitely recommend it, obviously. Number 7 is one of my ex-coworkers' favorite Coen Brothers films, Personally, not mine, but still a really good film. That's Barton Fink, the ultimate film about a writer who has writer's block and all that happens, all the hijinks that ensue. Good film, worth watching for John Turturro's performance alone. And John Goodman's also a hoot and a half to watch in the film. Number 6 is another one of the Coen Brothers films that I recently finally got around to watching. That's Miller's Crossing. Holy cow, this was a heck of a film to watch. I really like this film. There are a lot of twists and turns, some of which I saw coming, most of which I didn't see coming. But it's such a good film. It's filmmaking that is just so great to watch. And it's also the film that answered the question of, what was that music that was used in the Shawshank Redemption trailer? I know the answer now. That is, of course, Miller's Crossing. And I was watching Miller's Crossing, and I was like, holy cow, I recognize this music. I'm like, oh yeah, Shawshank Redemption trailer. So, but that's obviously not the only reason why Miller's Crossing is this high up on the list. But that being said, there are 5 other films that are higher. Number 5 being Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? This is a adaptation of sorts of the Odyssey. George Clooney, John Turturro, John Goodman, they're all fantastic in the film. Fun fact, the Coen brothers almost always work with Roger Deakins, who's one of my all-time favorite cinematographers. And Oh Brother, Where Art Thou was the first film to do color grading. For those that don't know, color grading is when, you obviously shoot the film, and then in post-production, you tinker and tailor with the, the lighting and, obviously the filters. Because before that, you didn't have that ability. But with Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, they did that. Roger Deakins was the first person to do that. And why was he the first person to do it? Well, because they were shooting in the South, and if I'm not mistaken, it was way too green and luscious. And so Roger Deakins came up with the technique to make it look, the way it looks in the film. And that's why he got an Oscar nomination, as well as the fact that it's a beautifully filmed film that is very, very comedic. And it's got a great killer soundtrack. Would highly recommend if you, for some reason, haven't seen it already. Number 4 is, I know a lot of people that have this as their number 1 film, and for good reasons. It's a fantastic film, which is why I own it on Blu-ray, and that's The Big Lebowski. It's such a quotable film that it's not like Anchorman, where Anchorman's quotable, but that's about it. It's like empty calories. The Big Lebowski actually has like a really good story to it, I think personally. It's a really good story that tells its story through the eyes of a stoner, but that's not the first and forefront. The first and foremost is, let's go bowling, and let's try and figure out who, the real Lebowski is, because you're the Mr. Lebowski, I'm the dude, but that's just like your opinion, man. Anyways, number 3 is a film that a lot of people, when this film came out, they looked at it as lightweight Coen Brothers fare. I didn't see it that. I saw it as one of their all-time bests. In fact, I call it a masterpiece. It's the most underlooked 2010 film, in my opinion. That's True Grit. I actually, for those of you that don't know on this channel, I don't really read books. I really don't. But I did read True Grit after I saw the original version, and as I was getting in preparation for the new adaptation. And holy cow, this is very, very, very faithful to the book. There's only one thing they change, and that's the cabin scene after, spoiler alert, the one guy gets his fingers chopped off. After that whole scene with the shootout that happens, that wasn't in the book. But besides that, everything else was very, very accurate to the book. And not only that, it's just incredible filmmaking. And it gave the Western genre a little jolt, because it's a genre that, for many people, they look at it as a genre that's, old and stuffy and not entertaining. But you can show them this movie, and they'll be like, holy cow, that was great. So that's why it's so high on my list. Number 2. Oh, yeah, you betcha. That's Fargo. Fargo is, man, oh, man, I love this film. I love this film so much that when the TV show came out, I was skeptical, but I watched the show, and I love that show as well. On my channel, I've only done season 1 for that show, and I do apologize about that. I will be doing season 2 and 3 hopefully soon, but enough of that exposition. Fargo, the movie, if you haven't seen it for some reason, this is 96 minutes of your time that you need to spend watching this film. It's quotable. It's got a great sense of humor. It's very dark when need be. but it also has such interesting characters that you can't help but care about and root for. And, you betcha you'll be entertained by this movie. Oh, yeah. Number one. Number one is a great film. It's not just a great Coen Brothers film. It's a great film in general. It finally got the Coen Brothers that Best Director statue as well as Best Picture. And that's No Country for Old Men. First of all, let me just say this. This is not an easy film to watch in some regards. It's very dark. It is comical in some scenes from a very, very dark aspect. But it's such an incredible feat of filmmaking. I go back and forth on whether this or There Will Be Blood should have won Best Picture. That's another discussion for another day. But I think this is such a brilliant film. It is also one of the most different Coen Brothers films completely. Like, again, another one of their films that you wouldn't think is theirs. But it's a masterpiece, and it slightly beats Fargo, True Grit, and The Big Lebowski as my favorite one of their films. And obviously gets the highest recommendation at all of them. Now, let's talk about the Coen Brothers. So the Coen Brothers, their style, the reason why I say some films aren't, like Coen Brother films, is because when you think of Coen Brothers films, you think of unique dialogue, you think of witty humor, you think of characters that are so well written and so deeply rooted in dark humor or just comedic humor in general. Some of their films don't really have humor. And some of those films don't really follow a murder or, all these twists and turns, which is why it feels different, And it's not to say that those ones are better, but it's just to say that the filmmakers, the Coen Brothers, that is, they are very versatile with their work. Yes, most of their stories do follow a murder, and yes, comedic hijinks do ensue, but at the end of the day, they're so great at what they do and, bringing about all these interesting characters to the screen that, fill a story that easily could have just been okay and populated to be, above average because of the directing and acting and, people that edit and do the cinematography. Like, he has great people behind the cameras and in front of the cameras, and that's why their films work so well. That's why even the lowest film, number 18, The Hudsucker Proxy, I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 because even that film I thought still had merits. And that's the thing. I don't think there's ever going to be a bad Coen Brothers film as of right now because they've done 18 films, and I have those 18 films. I haven't hated any of them. I thought some of them were just solid, but again, a filmmaker just doing a solid film and not a flop or a terrible movie, that's something to be very, very much so admire because they're great filmmakers and they consistently do so. And that's why I respect them a lot. And that's why I decided to do, them as a ranking video. So, guys, let me know your thoughts, though, on the Coen Brothers. What's your ranking list of theirs from worst to best? Let me know in the comment section down below. And also, do you have any recommendations of people to, obviously do ranking lists for? I'm planning to do, like, Terrence Malick, my mistake, Paul Thomas Anderson, and a slew of others. But I do want to hear you guys' thoughts. And, guys, as always, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget the subscription, notification bell, and I'll catch you guys later.